Hello, I'm James Ingram. This is part 3 of video number 814, which shows an HO gauge 2-track automatic yard operating 3 HO trains on the same main line, powered by an NCE mini panel. This is a continuation of part 1, which is a demonstration, and then in part 2 we tried to review all the commands. Now what this part 3 shows is 3 minor enhancements. They're also complications, but these minor enhancements are something you may or may not want to consider if you ever do a system something like this. And the key thing to keep in mind is these 3 enhancements are independent of each other. You could do any one of them without doing the other 2, or you could do any 2 of them, whichever. They're all independent of each other. Here's the first enhancement. We added a single pole, single throw switch that we can use to connect input 9 to ground. We can use this to control the timing between trains, so the system will run in a busy mode or a more of a casual mode, and this will be demonstrated. Our second enhancement, we added this wire here that we can use to connect input 21 to ground. This could be a switch also. I just used a wire, but this we use to influence the automatic, when it's in automatic passing siding mode, running just 2 trains. We can run 2 trains alternately as normal, or we can use it to run just 1 train at a time or just the other train at a time, and this will make more sense when we look at the commands. The third enhancement's back here in the rear. If you recall, in part 1 we had a reed switch in each leg of this siding here. You can see the green tape denotes the location of where the reed switches used to be. There was one under here. You can see one of the holes I made to get the reed switch under the roadbed. There was one here. Now what we've done in part 3, we removed those 2 reed switches and put one of them back in the rear. That reed switch is back here now. We've got a single reed switch, and we use a time delay similar to how we did in part 1 with the green reed switch T14, reed switch 14. We use a time delay so that when the train crosses over that reed switch back there at its new location, we add about a 3-second time delay until the train gets in about here where the reed switch used to be, and then we send the command to stop the train. So we're getting the same effect almost, but we're just using 1 reed switch, which simplifies the wiring a little bit. Alright, we'll start this system up now by pushing push button number 1, which now starts the trains running. In our initial conditions, they had that Jeep on the trestle upstream of reed switch number 14. Now, this is running in what we called in part 1 when we did all the demonstrations, mode 3C, and you can think of the C as casual, where almost all the time there's only 1 train running. In the point where a train is released from the yard is back in the far rear, where that green arrow is pointing down at the curve track on the lower level. That's where the effective release point is. That's done by time delay. Just reviewing our reed switches right here where that green tape is, and we add about a 15-second time delay before the mini panel actually sends a command to start a train out of the yard. So the effective release point is over where that green arrow is. If you watch when the engine gets to that green arrow, one of the trains should start up out of the yard, and there it goes. Now we'll let about 3 or 4 engines go past the release point, and then what we can do, there's how this is actually set up with this enhancement. There's actually 2 delay statements. There's about a 1 second delay statement, which moves the release point down to here. And there's a second one that adds another 14 seconds, which moves it over there. And by adding this single pole, single throat switch in here, we can ground input 9, which will cause it to skip the second delay, and that'll shift it from mode 3C to mode 3B. You can think of it B as busy, where we keep 2 trains running as much as we can. Now let's make that change. I'm going to reach over here and flip this read switch from open, not this read switch, flip this switch from open to closed, which will ground input 9, which will cause it to skip the second delay. So right about now, you can see now it started that shark nose out when the train coming off the trestle got down to the first arrow here, because we're skipping over the second delay. That's the most significant enhancement we're showing in this video. When we did the demonstrations in part 1, we demonstrated what we called mode 3B, the busy mode. Then I shut down the camera and shut down the system, and I changed the time delay in 6 different places in the commands in the mini panel. And then I started the system back up and showed mode 3C, the other way of running it. The advantage of this enhancement we have here, we can change that timing on the fly without even stopping the trains. Now again, watching that C424 coming down off the trestle, when it gets to the arrow right about here, it'll start the train out of the yard. And you might ask, what's the value of this? The only thing I can think of is, let's say you're using a system like this for an open house or something like that, or a demonstration. If there's lots of people present, you probably want to make it run as impressively as possible, as much action as possible, and you would use this mode 3B we're running in right now, the busy mode, to keep 2 trains running as much as possible. Then say later in the day, when there's only 1 or 2 people or nobody, and you're running trains for an empty room, you might switch it to the mode 3C, the casual mode, where 2 trains are sitting almost all the time, a more relaxed mode. Now I'll make this change now. We'll put that switch back to the open position. Now it had already skipped over the delay statement, so this train started up, but the next one that comes down the trestle, it's going to encounter that second delay statement inside the mini panel, which will extend the timing back to the longer delay, which will make it wait until that blue engine on the trestle gets all the way over in the corner there before it starts the train in the siding. Now you can see right about now, when it went over back in the rear, when it got to that far arrow back there, you can see the train started out of the siding. Said another way, we're back to running in the casual mode with the longer delay between trains, which results in 2 trains sitting on the siding most of the time. And again, the other 2 enhancements described in this video, they're all independent of each other, so you can do just this one and not the other 2, or either the other 2 without this one. Now the price we pay, the complication, we have to add 2 lines of, we have to add a skip command, skip if the input is closed. We have to add that, and we have to add a delay statement for each of the 6 subsequences in the program, which results in 12 more lines of commands to go through this complete cycle before it repeats, so we use up more space in the mini panel. That's the downside of making this enhancement. Now let's shift, just to demonstrate, let's shift this thing back to from the casual back to the busy mode. I just closed that read switch, which will cause it to skip over the second delay. So the next train that goes up the siding, which will be that blue one, it should trigger the train in the yard when it goes over this, past this arrow here. And incidentally, you may notice I swapped an engine, that blue C424 that's going up on the trussel. I put that in place of the Erie Lackawanna Trainmaster, 2 different engines. So what I did is I just went in and changed that. That's number 451, and I changed it to number 051. I changed that engine's number so that it has the same number the Trainmaster had, so I didn't need to change the number in the mini panel. Now normally you would need to go in and change the speeds for the new engine, but this one seems to run pretty well at the same speed as the Trainmaster did. It. Now again, note when this comes down the trussel, because I changed the timing, it's going to start a train out of the yard sooner. We're back to running the busy mode 3B. Again, you can see the Jeep on the siding just drifted to a spot, and only a few seconds later we're pulling out that blue C424. So we're coming pretty close to keeping 2 trains running all the time when we operate in the busy mode. Now again, we'll go back to the casual mode, and if I do it before, yeah, I got it just before it went over the read switch. Now we're back to the casual mode. You notice a train didn't pull out of the siding. It's waiting until the blue one gets all the way back in the rear about now. And I used a switch to do this. It's just a single pole, single throw switch. You could also use a wire. That's what I did for the other input, which we called Enhancement 2. I just used a wire, but either a wire or a switch will accomplish the same thing, just a convenient way to ground the input. Here's the wiring diagram for the original demonstration, part 1. And you can see down here we've got 2 read switches. Up here we've got 2 push buttons. Now let's take a look at the slightly different wiring diagram for this video, part 3. Now you see we've only got 1 read switch. That's the most obvious change. We were calling that Enhancement 3. Enhancement 1, which is what we demonstrated, is right here. We added that's right here. We added a single pole, single throw switch, so we could ground input 9, and that way we could control the time delay between trains by using a statement that says skip the next command, skip the next instruction if input 9 is grounded. In the next instruction is the 14-second delay. So when we ground this input by closing that switch, we skip over the 14-second time delay, and we get the short time delay, which gives us our mode 3B, which keeps 2 trains running most of the time. And then over here is Enhancement 2, and this is shown as a wire in the video. In the same manner, we can ground input 21, and this is for the automatic passing siding operation. By grounding this, we can use it to control either one of 2 trains by themselves. Down here you can see the reed switch, one single reed switch back here instead of two reed switches up here. We call that enhancement 3. And just one push button. That's simply because we're out of space in the mini panel. So we have one button that starts the regular 3-train operation, and all the other routines we access by plugging a power cab into the mini panel's programming port and using the test part of the program routines. Now down here we use a time delay. It's about 3 seconds. So when the train's coming in the yard, go over this reed switch, we don't send them their set speed 0 command to start stopping. We don't send them that command until they get up here to where the reed switch used to be. So this allows us to just use one reed switch, simplify the wiring a little bit, but get essentially the same effect as far as stopping the trains. Now you may recall back in videos 8.12 and 8.13, we did something similar to this. We had a reed switch back here, and we just set the speed to 0 right here and use momentum to get them into the siding. You could do that here, but it takes a little longer doing it that way because you got to add a lot more momentum. Plus, when you've set the speed to 0 right here, if the engine loses contact on the turnout for even a brief second, then when it regains contact, it sees a speed 0 command, so it just sits there. So this way is a little safer. They come in all the way to here, and then when they get to this virtual reed switch and the delay statement times out, then we send the set speed 0 command. That is, we send a command telling the locomotives to travel at speed 0, and they'll start stopping down. And additionally, since this is a delay statement, we use quarter-second increments. If this train isn't parking quite the right place, you can increase or decrease the time delay between here and here by a quarter second to position this train where it needs to be on the siding. Just a quick note on how to access these files online if you're interested. Here is seen the web browser page for video 814 on YouTube, and if you go to the Show More link, which is down below the description, I'm going to click that, clicking the Show More link, and then we can scroll, if we scroll down past the contents, which is part B, to section C, which is the related links. The first link right here, if you click that link, that opens a directory, and here is some photos and the wiring diagram for the original part 1, and down at the bottom there's a folder named part 3 Enhanced. If you click that folder and open it, there's 2 files there, and the second one is the wiring diagram. We can view that here, the wiring diagram in PDF form, and then the first one also in PDF form is the command file, which has all the commands that we'll discuss in the next section. The rest of this video discusses the commands we have to add to make these 3 enhancements work. Let's take a look at the command file for this enhanced version. It's pretty much the same as before, and I spent a lot of time discussing the commands in part 2 of the video, so here I'll just try to show the differences for these 3 enhancements. Now, enhancement 1, as you may recall, is adding the single pole, single throw switch. It allows us to ground input 9, and that switch is shown right here. That's enhancement 1. Let's take a look at that in the programming for it. Here's our 3-train operation, and here's our enhancement 1. It's shown in this green box. It occurs like 6 places in the sequence. This is a sequence for the normal sequence for running 3 trains, mode 3. And what happens when you start this routine? If you picture the system with the yellow and blue GP35 on the trestle, it selects Loco 3364. And again, let me say this is the same commands as seen in part 1, except for the additions, which are shown by the green box for enhancement 1 and the red box for enhancement 3, which is moving the stop read switch. But if we look at this thing as it starts, we select this logo, start it up at speed 22, and then we wait for input 14 to go to ground, and that's when the Jeep on the trussel crosses the go read switch number 14 that's at the bottom of the trussel. And then we delay 1 second before starting the train out of the yard. That's the busy mode, where we start the train sooner to keep the trains operating more of the time. But if the switch is open, this single pole, single throw switch, if that's open or not even connected, then it doesn't skip the next command, so it executes this statement, which is delay another 14 seconds. And that gives you the long delay, which gives you the mode 3C, the casual operation with just one train running most of the time. And then it goes down here and does the same thing wherever these other blue boxes are. There's 3 here and 3 on the next page. But that gives you the casual operation, where you have the long delay of 15 seconds total, 1 second here and 14 seconds here. Now, if we want to shift to mode B, which is the busy mode, where we keep 2 trains running, then we close this single pole, single throw switch that connects input 9 to ground. So when the mini panel is executing these commands, it does this delay of 1 second, but it encounters this statement that says skip if input 9 is grounded, and if the switch is closed, then input 9 is grounded, so it skips over this delay statement, so the total delay is only 1 second. Then it sets the turnouts curved and starts the train on the siding up and continues its routine. And if we look at the next page here, we see that we see four more of these green boxes. Three more, which is a total of 6. And then the end of the routine is down here, where it links to input 1 that goes back to the top. And incidentally, I should probably mention we can control this by the push button. We have push button 1, which starts as normal 3-mode operation. All the other stuff is accessed by, we have to access it by going into test mode and selecting inputs in the test mode, because we're out of space in the mini panel. Now we'll take a look at Enhancement 3. Enhancement 3 is when we move this read switch from in the yard inside the sidings, where it was in part 1. We moved it out to behind the turnout, I should say upstream of the turnout. So we have, and the advantage of this is we only have to wire up 1 read switch instead of 2 read switches. And then we use a delay command to send the stop command when the train gets about to here, the same as where the read switches used to be. So the operation is almost identical. We're just using a delay command to save on wiring up 2 read switches. Now the important thing to note, and I've said this probably 20 times before in these 2 videos, but it's important. When this train, this is the Jeep on the trussel in the video, it'll cross over this green read switch, which is number 14, the go read switch. And then when that happens, the mini panel will set the turnouts to curved and start the shark nose, which is the next train to go out, which is stopped. It'll start that up, so that shark nose will start leaving the siding. Meanwhile, this Jeep, the yellow engine on the trussel, is going to come around, go over the red read switch is number 16. At that point, the mini panel will start executing a delay statement. It's 3 seconds in the video for my system, and when that 3 seconds times out, it'll send the set speed 0 command to the Jeep, which will now be in here. And now that command has to be sent before the shark nose goes around the layout and comes over the green read switch, that's got the set speed 0 command has to be sent, and then the mini panel has to start looking at the wait until input 14 is grounded. When the sharp nose gets here, that has to happen before. This set speed 0 command has to be sent, and the mini panel has to be over here looking at this green read switch before the sharp nose gets here. If the sharp nose gets here first and goes over that read switch while the mini panel is still watching this point, then the system will be out of sequence and we'll have a wreck. That's one limitation, just to keep that in the back of your mind. When you do this with relays, like in my old 1992 videos, V9202 series, the relays don't care that can happen out of sequence with relays, but when you're using a mini panel, it's got to stay in sequence. Anyways, let's go down in the program here and look at where the read switch is affected. The red boxes are this enhancement 3 about moving the read switch back upstream of the turnout where we have it in this part 3. And all we've done is we've added a delay statement for the system in the video. We've said delay 3 seconds to get the loco past the turnout entering the yard. So we're sending the actual stop command, which is here, to the loco, just about the same place we did in part 1. We're just using this delay statement to get the train into the yard. And again, that happens 6 places in this sequence. There's, I think, 2 on this page, and then on page 4, there's the other 4 of them. So and again, they take up a little extra space. That's the downside of these enhancements. This takes up 1 line for enhancement 3, the read switch, and the enhancement 1 takes up 2 lines. So you got 12 lines total taken up for enhancement 1, and another 6 lines added for enhancement 3. Let's look at enhancement 2. Enhancement 2 here is where we added that wire from input 21 that went around and came to ground. So that allows us to ground input 21 when we connect this wire. Earlier in the video, it's a white wire. I just added a white wire onto my system. This could be a single pole, single throw switch. But there's a note here. It says a vertical note says controls the automatic passing siding 1 or 2 train operation. And let's go down in the program and take a look at how that affects the operation. Here's our 3 train operation. Here we're passing. We talked about that a minute ago. Here's our read switch test mode. In this section, there's no change to that. It's the same as it was in video number 1, part number 1 of the video. Now here's our automatic passing siding routine. In this blue, the blue box shows the 2 lines we added here and another 2 lines down here that are affected by that wire connected to input 21. The red box is the same is above for moving the read switch. It adds an additional 3 seconds to get the locos in the yard as a result of moving the stop read switch number 16. So let's look at these blue boxes. What this says, well, let's go back up here. Our automatic passing siding, you may recall, is we run the train on the inside track for 1 or more laps and then stop it and park it, and then we go down and run the train on the outside track for 1 or more laps. We stop and park it, then we go down to the bottom of this routine. I should say the mini panel goes to the bottom of this routine. There's a link to input 23, so that brings it up to the top, and then it starts all over again. Basically it runs 1 train, runs the other train, then it goes back up to the top, runs the first train, and runs the second train. Now with this enhancement 2, with that wire connected to input 21, what we can do if we connect that wire, it comes down here and encounters this skip if input 21 is open, And if that wire is connected, it won't skip. It'll go back to input 23 and run the same train. Said another way, if that wire is connected, it'll just execute this part, encounter this statement here, go back to input 23 and start over again. So it'll just run one train. In other words, here's an explanatory note. Normal two-train operation is open. It'll skip this statement, connect the wire to ground, input number 21 for testing to run just one train. You might ask, why do we want to do this? Normally we'd be wanting to run two trains, but sometimes we need to test just one train, test its momentum. I called this momentum testing in earlier videos. We want to test the momentum in just one train to make sure it parks correctly in the yard. So that's mainly what this is intended for. Then the same thing down here, if we have that wire connected and we start using remember we're doing this in the programming mode, if we say start and test input 26, it'll start here, it'll come down, that'll be closed, the input number 21 will be grounded, so it won't skip this statement. It'll encounter this statement that says go to input 26, so it'll go back up here to the top of this part of the routine and execute it again. So again, it'll just loop around here from inputs 28 to 26 and run the train on the outside track. At this point, we're down to input 28, so we've got two more inputs, only two more inputs that aren't used. And if we come down to page 7, which is the end of things, we got inputs 29 and 30 that aren't used, so I just put a little routine in here that'll run the third train. 3364 is the yellow and blue GP35. When we were doing two-train operation that we talked about a minute ago, we had to park this on the siding to get it out of the way. But if we want to do momentum testing on this train or just run it by itself for some other reason, this routine will do it. We just have to clear a siding and park one of the other trains like the Shark Nose or the Blue Dipper, the dark blue diesel, to get one of those sidings clear. But this basically this loops around, it runs that train, stops it, comes to this statement here at the end, linked to input 29, which is here, and does it again. And there was no space to send a command to set the turnouts properly. I usually send a command to set the turnouts properly, but there was no space, so you got to make sure you line the turnouts manually before you use this routine. And then again, the last input is this 31, which I don't normally use because it's automatically executed upon startup. This routine here shown on the next to the last page 7 is the automatic block routine that we showed in part 1 of the video, where we just run two trains on the main line without using the turnouts. The turnouts aren't needed at all. Now this routine was completely pushed out of the show, so to speak, for this part 3 video because we used all our inputs up. The addition of the extra lines of instructions for the enhancements used up enough space in the mini panel that there was no room at all for this routine. It's kept here for reference, but this is a step for the automatic block routine shown here at the end. If you were ever going to do something like this with the mini panel, such as what we're showing in these 3 parts of the video number 814, you'd have to decide which was more important to have. This is a very useful routine, possibly especially for large scale, because a lot of times with large scale trains running on a garden railway, outdoors you get gunk in the switches, and the switches aren't always reliable, and you could use something like this to control 2 large trains without being dependent on your turnouts working properly. All you really need to have is 2 reed switches in the track somewhere to perform this routine.